Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Inner World podcast with yours truly and the great Dylan Sicoscio. Today, we're talking about one of the most arcane mysteries of all of the Judaic traditions, the king of the world, the priest who is the high king of God, Melchizedek. Very fascinating subject. You know, I asked 3 Christians what they thought about Melchizedek while I was preparing for this. I got the same answer each time. What do you think it was?
King of peace or king of righteousness?
You're giving him too much credit. The answer was, who's that? What's that?
But if you do anything against what they believe, they'll scream and rant how you're not a Christian.
Well, not these particular Christians, but yeah, the point is well made. Absolutely. But it's been a while since we did one of these. And now that I'm a dad, hopefully I can
Congrats.
hang in there for
the Potter.
Hopefully I can hang in there for the marathon that this is lined up to be, kind of running on fumes, but I'm sure the enthusiasm is going to kick into gear because these are the most fun shows and we have amazing notes to cover this time.
So instead of Jupiter, you'll be Garpater, like Garten Pater.
Yater Potter. Cool. I'm into that. So what else? We got, it's been so long. We're on episode 11. Been so long since we did episode 10.
Yes, and let's just take a quick break real quick. If you're listening to this on Chance's side, like and share the video. If you're looking at it, doing it on my side, like, share the video. If you're on Substack, restack the video. Please help us get this out there because a lot of the things that we've talked about in the past have gotten us algorithmically put in the timeout, if you get what I'm saying, like the permanent timeout. So,
right. And also this material is not necessarily for everyone. It's not everyone's going to care or be able to comprehend, and that's fine. But because of that, the reach is limited. And that means that the best thing you can do to help us out is to just share it with at least one person, personally, not like a, shotgun blast share, but say, hey, I know that you're into mythology, symbolism, language, etc., religion. Check this out. Here's why I like it. Because, we all get shared a million things all the time. So if you can put a little personal touch on it, we can get just one more elite self-initiated mystery seeker. I think that would be great.
And you never know what is going to resonate with people. Never. Sometimes people are aware of these subjects. And one of the things that's a pretty safe bet with our material is that it's all sourced. So even if something led someone to a controversial conclusion, at least they can see it. And some people might be interested in something like Melchizedek and have never gotten wind of this, just like the people you asked if they don't know, or if they knew anything about it and they had nothing to say. Well, that's something that at least if they're honest, they say, okay, I have no idea what this is. So let me take a peek,
Yeah. One of my favorite things about the Melchizedek subject is it's one of the very best pieces of evidence, if you're just sticking to scriptural evidence, to show that Christianity, as taught by Jesus, although he didn't call it Christianity, right, was something ancient and preceded the time period posited to Jesus. Why did you want to do this one? I know that you're kind of just continuing the Taylor weaves, which is great, but why did this one jump out at you as important?
Well, I don't want to give it away yet, but there is just, over the last several years, there's been some pushback by certain people who have basically unintentionally and some intentionally tried to undo my work by talking about these archetypes being the pole star. And not one, as far as I can tell with anything I've ever seen from any of these people, has addressed this Prince of Peace without mother, without father, without genealogy.
It is popular to attribute Melchizedek to the pole star in more modern occultism. I'm kind of a bothist. I'm able to see dual symbolism going on with a lot of this stuff.
You can see that the name is just like what scholars like Jacob Bryant have been proving, and what I have been proving, that it is from the solar cult, who's they named everything after some title of the sun. You can see that in it, but you can also see, as far as the Masonic biblical tradition, the Bible, and a lot of people might have a problem with the Bible being Masonic text, but you don't have really anything. It's all a product of the Middle Ages. So it's made well past, everything you have relating to it is well past the era of the modern Freemason tradition. And so you can at least see how in their tradition, they've ascribed Melchizedek to the pole star.
Well, let's get into our notes, man. This is going to be a fun one. I'm going to start our free portion with one of many quotes from the great Godfrey Higgins out of his epic giant work, Anacalypsis, where he says, "It may be observed that there is scarcely a single dogma or rite of the Romish Church which I have not already shewn to have been equally in use among the Gentiles. Therefore, on this account, it seems to follow that there must have been something else. And what can this have been but the secret doctrines of wisdom and the gnosis, which I have shewn were the secret doctrines of all nations? In our endeavors to ascertain the cause why the Judeo-Cressian mythos, which I have discovered in so many nations, was not treated of in ancient authors, we never give sufficient credit to the exertions of the ancients to keep secret their mysteries, of which this Cressarion was the chief part. It was not only forbidden to reveal the mysteries, but it was forbidden to either write or even to speak about them." So that's kind of the starting point. We're going to be talking about the secrets of Cressianity, right? That's something you covered really well in your previous books.
Well, I think I just want to augment the way you say that, if I can. When you see that Ada, it's it often, that's one of those transliterations that is not really good. It's exactly literal, because that Ada represents our E, our Latin E, but it's really more pronounced like a Latin I. So it's Chris, so just something to keep track of. And I've been going through work where I have to transliterate a lot of Greek lately, and some of the ligatures that we've seen, I think I pinned down like how you can see the sigma and the sigma tau interchanging, and it almost looks like when you see it in like the print, it just looks like a slightly augmented sigma, but it looks like that, but it represents ST. It's a ligature. So that's a lot of people don't understand, like, I shouldn't say that, a lot of people, who the fuck am I? I very rarely have heard people talk about how embedded in our English culture or language, you still see ST words that don't pronounce the T, like listen, mistletoe, Christmas, epistle. That's a remnant of a time where that sigma, which is the S, and the sigma tau, ST, are interchangeable. So you can see how Christos is also Christos. And
yeah, Christmas is the best example of that, because it's a remnant. We're still saying Christ rather than Christ.
100%. You're exactly right. So, yeah.
Now, as we already alluded to, there's a pretty large body of commentary out there in more recent centuries regarding Melchizedek being related to the pole star, but also to this concept of like the Great White Brotherhood, or the secretest of secret orders that runs all of the secret orders, and that Melchizedek is a type of the Lord of the world, or the King of the world. I'm going to just read a quote. By the way, I'm not asserting that this is the case, but I want to put this out there so that we can look at that in context with other things we're going to talk about, and people can come to their own conclusions. Is this a misinterpretation of the ancient system? It's all very easy to interpret one way or the other. So the Sufi and esoteric author Rene Guénon, who I like a lot, actually, he's got some good stuff, in his book titled The King of the World, introduces this book as follows: "The Lord of the world is the true authority on earth, and reference to him can be found in every tradition. He is associated with the name Manu amongst the Hindus, Metatron among the Kabbalists, and Melchizedek in the Judeo-Christian tradition. His abode is sometimes called Agartha, a place analogous to the Siddha Ashram of the yogis or the Shambhala of the Tibetan Buddhists. The idea of Agartha often gives rise to wild and imaginative accounts of secret underground cities and the like, but in this book you can discover what this place really is and how it functions in the present time phase. The very real fact of the Lord of the world has been buried out of sight in the West or distorted by supposing that the Lord is an authority solely of the material domain. The true Lord of the world unifies both material and spiritual authority in himself and is not a satanic or even demiurgic principle. He is the very action of God on this planet. Now, I'm going to speak on this a little bit. This book is about the idea of the reincarnating protagonos, and that this is a real thing, but that maybe rather than a direct incarnation of a divine being, it's more like a stage of initiation that the highest person in a secret order can reach, and that through the kind of action of sympathetic magic, that this white brotherhood has the ability to affect change in the world through their stellar rituals and things of that nature. I'm kind of simplifying it, but they talk about the interior of the earth in a lot of the descriptions of this Agartha place where the king of the world is said to reside. And Guinan relates that to the interior of the earth as in the North Pole, like a center point. Whether or not this is misconstrued and it's actually just about an underground or esoteric knowledge, or a misunderstanding of the mythos of Dis or Hades, or how, this reincarnating savior god is an underworld god like Osiris and all the like that we've talked about so much, that can be up to the listener to decide. But these are the things I want to lay on the table here.
So one of the things that I would say about the three names he mentioned, nowhere in the etymology of Melchizedek is the meaning of Lord. The first root would be king. He is the king of Salem.
I think that's actually a translation issue because he's writing in French and he's actually saying the word king, but the translator kept saying Lord.
Okay, so that's okay. And that's another problem, This is
saying king.
The problem.
Rex Mundi.
Yeah, so you need king of the world. Okay, so that's a different, I recant. But you speaking these translations, you need to then override that and be like, okay, this guy is, whoever's translating this has got his head way up his ass. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, luckily I even noticed. That's part of the trickiness of all this.
Yeah, but isn't it cool though? The more you look at like Latin and stuff, the more you, even without a day of taking French in your life, you can recognize everything in it.
Well, I did take a day or two of French.
I didn't. I can get the gist of French. It's wild.
Yeah, it's so similar to Latin. So we're going to talk about also how in the Noah episode, we revealed that Noah was the same as the Hindu Menu, and that the 7 passengers on Noah's Ark or Menu's Ark are the same as the 7 rishis or the 7 kings of Rome or the 7 sages of Greece with Solon, etc. In Greek, nomos, which is very close to backwards of Menu kind of phonetically. That's Greek for law. And that's also similar to pneuma. Let's consider this passage from Clement of Alexandria in the work Stromata, where he says, Numa, the king of the Romans, was a Pythagorean and, aided by the precepts of Moses, prohibited from making an image of God in human form and of the shape of a living creature. Accordingly, during the first 170 years, though building temples, they made no cast or graven image. For Numa secretly showed them that the best of beings could not be apprehended except by the mind alone. That's because it is mind, nous. Thus, philosophy, a thing of the highest utility, flourished in antiquity among the barbarians, shedding its light over the nations. And afterwards it came to Greece. Note that, after Rome came to Greece, first in its ranks were the prophets of the Egyptians, and the Chaldeans among the Assyrians, and the Druids among the Gauls, and the Samoneans among the Bactrians, and the philosophers of the Celts, and the Magi of the Persians who foretold the Savior's birth, and came into the land of Judea guided by a star. The Indian gymnosophists are also in the number, and the other barbarian philosophers. And of these are two classes, some of them called Sarmene, others Brahmins. And those of the Sarmene, who are called Hilobi, neither inhabit cities nor have roofs over them, but are clothed in the bark of trees, feed on nuts, and drink water in their hands. Like those called Incratites in the present day, they know not marriage nor begetting of children. Some too of the Indians obey the precepts of Buddha, whom on account of his extraordinary sanctity, they have raised to divine honors. That's kind of the gist of what this Melchizedek character is revealing out of the Hebrew Old Testament, is that there was already a universal tradition of philosophy and initiation, just like Clement is describing here from so long ago.
Well, even to support you, how you're talking about with the Bible and stuff, the quote that I included on my thumbnail that we'll get into, I'm sure, once we get through Robert's work or Mr. Taylor's work, but it says literally in the Bible, King of Salem, without father, without mother, without genealogy, having neither beginning of days nor end of life, and being made like to the Son of God, doth remain a priest continually. The sun rises and sets, the sun lives and dies at the solstices. Polaris doesn't. So you can see how in this tradition they ascribe that name to Polaris.
Yeah, and everything moves around it. And
one
that's
of
the most high point.
Yes. And so one of the things, well, it's not the most high point. If you think about it, you could see how if you assume that we're on that type of tilt, that's what it would be, but it's definitely not at the MC, right? It's not at the midheaven. It's at an angle, and that's why they presume that the world is at a tilt, but it doesn't mean it is. And it's also all of that, the way it looks to us from our perspective is a perspective thing that you can map out with a protractor, which is why they have this theoretical like idea of like a spherical heaven. But the fact that you can measure angles of elevation from sea level to 60,000 feet in the sky, and they don't change, the angles of elevation don't change, and you can use it to navigate, right, and triangulate your position in this world, it proves that it's not a sphere. But I just had an article post at the beginning of the week because you brought up Menes, and it's from Jacob Bryant, this quote, but it's related to all these items that are names of the gods. And this isn't in our show notes, but I just wanted to bring it up. He wrote, they call him Baal, B-A-L, and Baal, B-A-A-L. And there were others of their ancestry joined with him, whom they styled Baalim, lords. Cush was one of these, and this idolatry began among his sons. In respect then to the names which this people in process of time conferred either upon the deities they worshipped or upon the cities which they founded, we shall find them to be generally made up of the same original terms for a basis, such as Ham or Ham, and Cush, or else of the titles with which these personages were in the process of time honored. These were Tot or Thoth, Men or Menes, Min, right? Ab, El, Or, Ait, as in Aita, Esh or Ish, that's the fire, On, God, the sun, On, Plato wrote, tell me the God, On, who was, is, and shall be, Bel or Baal, Cohen, priest, Keren, seed, radiance, horn, Ad, Adon, Adonis, Ob, Yov, right? O-B, O-V, Oph, that's the root of serpent, Apha, Apis, Aphis, Uk, Melech, which is Moloch, which is the root meaning king of Melchizedek. Anek, Sar, Sama, that's basically Sam, which you see encoded in Shemesh, the sun, or Shamash, the sun god. Samaim. We must likewise take notice of those common names by which places are distinguished, such as Kir, Ker, Kiryat, Karta, right? Carthage, Eres, right? You're going to see Erin, Ireland. The Greek name for peace that we're going to get to when he's talking king of peace is Irenis. And I had an epiphany while I was waiting for you in the green room that I think Ireland is named after this. You have Kol, Kala, Bet, or Bayet. You have Ein, like Ein Sophie, Kaf, and Cephas, or Kephas. Lastly, are to be inserted the particles of al and pi, which were in use among the ancient Egyptians. Now, the reason I read that to you is because you started with men, man, manis, right? That was in that quote. And those are all the sun. And everybody knows those are the sun. And those are all roots of the sun at different aspects of the year. So you can see how these names are transitioned from the sun to other bodies when they named that, because it was literally, I think, in the time of Plato that he wrote the gods. They don't have names. The planets don't have names. They're among the gods. And then in the centuries after, they ascribed these ancient names of the sun to the planets. So that's just food for thought for people. And while you were saying, you said, did you not quote Clemens? Did I hear you quote Clemens, or am I tripping?
I did.
So
is it Clemens or Clement, or is that two different guys?
Well, so it's Clemens, but then there's Clement. Yeah, there's different ways of spelling his name.
There's a sigma tau switch again.
Yeah, it doesn't. Yeah. While I was looking for that quote, I saw his name and I thought how Herakli is the pride of Hera. So Kle, right? That is it. Mens is the pride of men. Manu. Clement.
Right, which is also in Latin, that's the word for the mind.
Yes. Too. And that's anecdotal. That's anecdotal. I'm not saying that's his name. I'm just saying it's there.
Yeah, it's totally there. And what was that last part about al and pi? Like Alp? Oh, you're muted there.
No, al, like al, like the old name, that the root of Alaim or Elohim, right? How if you look at it, it's Aleph Lamed, which is al, and then pi, pi. Let's see if I don't know if I can find this. Let's see.
Well, that just makes me think of the word for both white and for mountain.
Yes, Alp. Yes. Yeah. Alpi.
Because this has everything to do with when we're talking about the pole, we're talking about the holy mountain as well. We're talking with the world axis idea.
Yeah. And it looks like a mountain, right? Like if you wanted to take that circular way the stars move, you could make it like it's like a canonical, like a cone. And he's going up and down the mountain and he's stopping in the cave or whatever for 3 days. There's all these allegories. But these were all created in times where they didn't have recording instruments, or if they did, they didn't last very long.
Well, take us through let's start going through the free section of your notes here. Okay,
cool. So Reverend Robert Taylor has the etymology of Melchizedek as king of righteousness, Moloch, or as he writes, Malachi and Saduk. He wrote, by thy high title, Cohen El Elyon, which is El Eon, God, the being, or Aeon, hence lion, hence the Greeks made Kion, which is Kyon, dog, priest of the Most High. Basileo Erenis, which is king of peace. And then he writes something in Greek, which translates as without father, without mother, without descent, having neither beginning of days nor end of life, but made like unto the Son of God, a priest to perpetuity. Now in Psalm 4, it is written, the Lord hath sworn, and he will not repent. Thou art a priest forever after the order of Melchizedek. Do you have access to this? Do you want to show how Melchizedek was spelled like more anciently, and how you can see how people take liberties and how they spell it in English now, myself included, just because I want people to be able to search it?
Well, I have your notes open.
Yeah. So if you just go straight, like a little bit down from where I am, you'll see a picture of Melchizedek. It's like a mosaic. And you can just see how there's different ways of spelling this in English or Latin letters. Now, Hebrews 7:1-3, for this Melchizedek, king of Salem, priest of God Most High, who did meet Abraham, turning back from the smiting of the kings, and did bless him, to whom also a tenth of all did Abraham divide. First, indeed, being interpreted king of righteousness, and then also king of Salem, which is king of peace, without father, without mother, without genealogy, having neither beginning of days nor end of life, and being made like to the Son of God, doth remain a priest continually. Now, think of all the, if we had maybe just put this information out a few years back, all the people fighting of how can Jesus be both the Son and the Father? And then how we had to explain that there were no adjectives back then. So saying somebody was the son or daughter of something was saying they were like that. They had those qualities, right? If you're the son of Belial, you are like an evil person, or you were like a bad person. If you're the son of God or the son of the Son, you're like the Son, or you have godly qualities. You know what I mean? It's not to be taken literally by people today. And that's one of the things that gets lost. Now, this is where I came in today, this morning, while I was waiting for you. And I'm just like minding my own business. And I saw that Basileo Irenis, and I'll hold it up so people can see it. But let's see, let me just make sure. Okay, great. So this is the king of peace, Basileo Irenis. And that's what it looks like in English, peace or peacemaking. And it sounds just like Eire, which is Ireland. That's actually what Ireland's named after, Celtic. And it was allegedly called Yarni or Yerni by Pytheas of Massalia. That's what this would be like. Yerni, and you see the IE right there. And we've done so many episodes on how that interchanges with IH and the epithet for Apollo, all that stuff. But this allegedly, Yerne, became Hibernia. And when I type this into Google Translate, it's just anecdotal. It's not reliable. But the fact that if you type this into Google, it returns the name winter. And we've talked about how these Apollyon, Abaddon, all these archetypes, they reckon the year and winter in certain cultures. Or you can see the qualities where they're named after the springtime reckoning, or the summertime reckoning, or the fall reckoning, like Bacchus, when you harvest the grapes. But what I thought about is, what if Ireland is not the land of Erin, but the land of peace? And that was something that I wanted to put out there, just in case anybody wants to pull that thread, preferably.
Well, I have an anecdotal observation there too, because we're going to be talking a lot about the sacrifice of bread and wine, because that's, in most people's opinion, that Eucharist is a Christian tradition, and it is, but it's older than Christianity. Even the Bible says so, because that's the sacrifice that Melchizedek offers after Abraham comes and brings him the tithe of 10% of the spoils of war. Now, in Hebrew, do you know what the word for wine is? I hold up that word for peace, irne, again. So the Hebrew word for wine is yad.
Pinot? No,
it's yad, Greek. Yad, nun. That's how it's spelled.
Yanan?
So they pronounce it like ein.
Okay. So that's the root. Yeah. Gotcha.
So we're seeing the same exact thing, especially if we throw in
ion. Yeah.
Especially, yeah, exactly. You're seeing it, ion. Now, if we throw in the rhoticism too, and that R in erne just is dropped, and it's just the N that we're looking at, then we see possibly a connection to the word for wine in this word for peace, which is important because that's Melchizedek. He's offering the wine as a sacrifice, and he's the king of peace. So that will make more sense later. If you listen to this twice, your mind will be exploding about that connection when you're at this part.
And if you think about it just from an astrotheological perspective, he kind of is the one that's orchestrating it all. He's in that top position, where he doesn't move allegedly, but everything's going around.
Yeah, exactly. Let's just keep going from your free notes here.
Yeah, let's do it.
Because this will give people the better context of what is said in the Bible about Melchizedek before we get into the deep gravy.
Yep. And the fact that you just noted that, and the fact I totally, without thinking about the Hebrew word for wine, I thought about the age as well, because I wrote,
that's the next paragraph in your notes.
What are the odds, right? So the fact that you just independently came to that, and then I came to that, but you came to it by a different route, you can see how, okay, maybe there is something to this. Maybe they are doing this, naming them after this system, and they're sharing the symbolism intentionally. There are several times that Melchizedek, in relationship to the word age, which means something to those familiar with determining the age, or aeon or ion, regarding astrology, as well as the effects of precession of the equinoxes and the replacing of the pole star, according to Egyptologists and the like, and why that is significant for navigators and farmers. Quote, "And for he doth testify, thou art a priest to the age," is what it says, according to the order of Melchizedek. Again, quote, "And inasmuch as it is not part from oath, for those indeed apart from oath are become priests, and he with an oath through him who is saying unto him, the Lord swear, and he will not repent, thou art a priest to the age, according to the order of Melchizedek. By so much of a better covenant hath Jesus become surety." This is where all the law guys start squirting. "And those indeed are many who have become priests, because by death they are hindered from remaining. And he, because of his remaining, to the age hath the priesthood, not transient, whence also he is able to save to the very end, and those coming through him unto God, ever living to make intercession for them. For such a chief priest did become us, kind, harmless, undefiled, separate from the sinners, and become higher than the heavens, who hath no necessity daily, as the chief priests, for his own sins to offer up sacrifice, than for those of the people. For this he did once, having offered up himself, for the law doth appoint men chief priests, having infirmity, but the word of the oath that is after the law appointeth the Son, S-O-N, to the age, having been perfected. From Matthew 23:63, I adjure thee by the living God that thou tell us whether thou be the Christ, the Son of God. Remember, Jesus dies and Christ rises. You will see his name written Christ Jesus as well. And that is also a Masonic tradition, allegedly. So regarding the Masonic astrotheological story of the Son, now consider what what followed that above passage that I just read. Quote, Jesus saith to him, thou hast said, nevertheless, I say to you, hereafter ye shall see the Son of Man sitting on the right hand of the power and coming upon the clouds of the heaven. Be interesting if man was not even talking about the English word, but mono, right? Then the chief priest rent his garments. That's to tear. That's what Bacchus, they rent Bacchus, right? Saying, quote, he hath spoken evil. What need have we yet of witnesses? Lo, now ye heard his evil speaking. What think ye? And they answered, saying, he is worthy of death. So Taylor continued, of all certainties, nothing can be more certain than that what respect be due to the authority of the book of Genesis, which is a subsequent consideration. This Melchizedek is, in the 14th chapter of that book, introduced as a real personage as Abraham. The author of that book supposes him to be a personage with whom his readers could hardly be unacquainted, and of whom it was enough to say that he was king of Salem, that he brought forth bread and wine, and he was a priest of the Most High God. And he blessed Abraham and said, blessed be Abraham of the Most High God. Who then is the Most High God? Do you want to take it from there and get in on this?
Let's just keep going.
Okay.
I'll bring more forward after we get a little further.
Perfect.
Let's go down through, the next two paragraphs here.
You got it. Taylor's question is answered in the 22nd verse of that passage. Yova, God Most High, possessing heaven and earth. That would be tetragrammaton. Yod He Vav He. Some people say Jehovah. Some people say Yahweh. It's Yova. And they almost always never want you to know that, because then you'll see it's Hova, Jupiter, which is Italian, not from the Middle East, not from Asia, but from Europe. Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought out bread and wine. These are characteristics of the sun, yet it is an example of attributing sun god characteristics to other luminaries, either to confuse the uninitiated or to recycle old names. Taylor wrote, that extraordinary epithet, the Most High God, first occurs in this enigmatical passage, as also the term priest, and again occurs not till, in like manner, it is found in the mouth of an alien, a stranger, and even an enemy to the race of Israel. Balaam, the son of Beor, hath said, and the man whose eyes are open hath said, he hath said, which heard the words of God and knows the knowledge of the Most High. I shall see him, but not now. I shall behold him, but not nigh. There shall come a star out of Jacob, and a scepter shall rise out of Israel, Chronos, God of time, which shall smite the corners of Moab. Jacob is literally the sun serpent, or serpent son. The radical would be Yak and Ob. Even as Jove, what people say is Job, is written with this serpent root, and we've covered that a few episodes back. So that scepter shall rise out of Chronos, which, when looking at how the cosmos move, the scepter could be the line from the observer to the pole, which is how we determine angles or latitudes, right? Acquiring angles of elevation to that object of interest, which would be the pole star and the horizon. And this is crucial to navigating and measuring the Earth. A lot of people aren't aware of that. Whatever degree of latitude you live on, you can look this up. If you're north of the equator, that latitude was measured by acquiring an elevation angle to Polaris. And so if you're at, let's say, the 37th parallel, that means where you are is 37 degrees to Polaris, between you, the horizon, and Polaris. That's how people find their way. It's a flat measurement. It's not up for debate. There's zero opinion involved. It's how people and our ancestors have been maintaining a tactical advantage for the last several hundred years. And so Shet is philologically set, because when you look at the old synagogue Hebrew, there's just Shin. They don't use Samek. And so you have to know whether it's S or SH, excuse me. So Shet is also the philologically set, the dying sun, the sun of the west of autumn. The corners of Moab, should it indicate the year or the pole through which the rivers of equinoxes and solstices cross, would be divided by that scepter, an illusion created by the perceived motion of the sun, moon, planets, and the stars. Now, keep in mind, when you see the word AR, that is both a river in Hebrew as well as the root of lion, Adi. which is a symbol
Also,
of the sun.
if you just add a hey, it's har, which is mountain.
Yep. And you don't know, because unless you have the actual document, we have to trust all these perceived interpretations and translations and all that stuff. And you'll see like Hagar is often written Agar. So just like, just exactly to support what you said, that Har might be a mountain for sure. And to the point of, and one doth rule out of Jacob and hath destroyed a remnant from Ar. The god An, which is another name for the sun, is Greek. And that's probably why it is called the One, on one, right? We don't spell one as W-O-N or something like that. We spell it as O-N-E, Oni, if you want, if you will, Yoni. There's a million things you could do with that. But that's why the sun is referred to as Solus, the alone one, and why Jehovah or Hova seems to have an obsession with being the only God, the Most High. And while implying, or all the while implying, there's more than one God. For if there weren't, there would be no need to command any of us that thou shalt have no other God before him.
It's pretty suspicious.
Right? And if you look at Elohim, anybody who's ever studied any portion of Hebrew knows that anything terminating in Yod Mem, Sofit, or I am, that's plural.
Goddesses, plural. Alaim.
Yep.
Goddesses, even. Well,
yes, because it harkens back to Al being an old archaic name for the sun or God, Al. And you see that still today, they say El, right? But if you look at how El is actually spelled in Hebrew, it's Aleph Lamed, A-L. And then when you add that hey at the end of it, it feminizes it, Ale.
Yeah, it's really interesting, the concept of the scepter possibly representing the angle of elevation. One of the things that we're going to get into much later is the demonstration of priest, king, general, augury, masonry, all wrapped up into one class of people. So it makes sense that there would be overlap there with navigation terminology, kingly terminology, and like sacred terminology. I want to talk a little bit about gematria for Melchizedek, because I think that has a few interesting reveals in it. Let's see here. So as we see, we've got 294 is the value for Melchizedek as it's spelled in the Hebrew. And that's Mem, Lamed, Kaf, Yod, Sadi, Dalet, and no, I mixed up one. What's the K versus the Q there? Kof and Kaf, are they not the same?
Yeah, it's no, they're not the same thing. So right. Where you see at the end of justice, that's Kof. That would be like equivalent to the Q, which is a more modern. And then the C is like a Kaf, or that backward C, and that's what you would just translate as a K. No, you got it. It looks like you got it right.
Yeah. Or did you language? Terrible.
Yeah. Well, you can see how they're taking older languages' letters and pretending that they're the origin of it, and it's just not working.
So the first three letters, MLK, Mem, Lamed, Kaf, that's king. Kind of makes you wonder about the whole Martin Luther King character. They're just giving like his initials in Hebrew means king.
Stop. Just seeing this, the way you transliterated the Malachi, it looks like Milky. What if the Milky Way is literally the Malachi way?
No, seriously though, I think that there could be
the way of the kings, the hall of the kings, the hall of the gods, something like that. The river of the gods. Yeah,
dude. And it's also related to like the wheat or the grain of the goddess. There's a lot there. Now, I find it interesting though that when we're looking at Melchizedek and we translate it as king of justice, it's really got a yod in there though, which makes it a plural, kings of justice. So is that potentially referencing a belief in the cyclical reincarnation of this figure? Or are we meant to actually interpret something else instead of king? Because we're all about MLK being king, but it's practically the identical word for angel or messenger. They just throw an aleph in there and make it MLAK, malak, for an angel. So when we're looking at this,
yeah, isn't it wild how they don't use vowels until they decide to use vowels?
I think
that ties into this.
I read in Higgins, he was talking about in one of the introductory sections of one of his books, he's talking about how he spent so long studying Hebrew, and he concluded that the biggest waste of time in his life was learning the vowel points of Hebrew, of modern Hebrew. Biggest waste of time of his life.
I remember that. I can't remember, was it a vertiginous burn or was it just like, the way you said?
Always vertiginous. So Melchizedek is king of justice or kings of justice or angels of justice. But we should also ask about the word Sedek, because that word is the exact same as the name for Jupiter in Hebrew. So the word for Jupiter and the word for justice is the same word. So if we're going back to the possible interpretation with Melchizedek as referring to an angel or a messenger, it could be a messenger of Jupiter, messenger of Jove. I find that interesting.
And I just want to, I don't know if it's a correction or there might be something that I don't, but the I doesn't mean it's plural unless you were reading it from like a Latin context, which you very well could be, since so much of this has the fingerprints of being Latin first and then translating it into other languages to make it appear differently. But Malachi, like you just said, means messenger of God. So if it were plural in Hebrew, it'd be Malachim, something like that. There'd be the I am, unless I'm missing something. Oh, fuck, you're muted. Sorry. I didn't catch it.
Yeah, I got that just by throwing it in, the spelling, mem, lamed, nun. I'm sorry, mem, lamed, kaf, yod, in MLKY. I threw that into a Hebrew dictionary and it gave me kings, plural. So
interesting. Yeah. Well, if you just type in Malachi, it means messenger of God. So that's where I don't know. But usually you'd have to, for it to be plural, it would be I am generally is masculine plural. Right. And then I think is it OT? That is feminine plurality. Something like that.
So continuing though, whether or not that's accurate weave that it could be plural. Although Higgins also makes that point, by the way. And I caught onto that before I read that in Higgins. But this king of justice or kings of justice, are there not gods and goddesses of justice throughout antiquity? Do we not see that symbolism still to this day outside of every courthouse? And is Jesus not the Prince of Peace, they say? And then even the name Solomon, philologically, it's the same as the Hebrew name Shlomo, which is the same as Salem, meaning peaceable or peace.
And you could look at it like the way they spell Jerusalem is like sacred peace, right? Jerusalem. But you could also look at it as peace. Salem is also Sulam, which is ladder. So you have sacred ladder.
There you go. Well, another thing about peace too is peace, you might equate that to stillness, which could bring us back to the pole star that's unmoving. Another couple of interesting gematria points here. Looking at the 194 part of Sedek, justice, is God of Abraham equals to that. Wait, I may have actually messed up my slides too. I have it that 194 is that, but this is incorrect. God of Abraham and Nimrod are 294. So that's the same as Melchizedek. I messed up the slide.
Gotcha. And Nimrod, yeah, that's interesting because
so ignore the 194 on the slide. It's 294. Yeah. Go ahead and comment though. It's really interesting that Nimrod would be the same value.
Well, so you'll see this, the way Nimrod is written in Greek is, it's new. I believe it's epsilon. It may be eta, but I think it's epsilon. I could be wrong, but it's Nebrodes. But what happens is they pronounce that V like B, so it's Nivrodis. And it means something different. I want to just keep going because I got to pull up my article because I have something coming out on Nimrod, or it already came out, but I got to find it so I give accurate information. Because you got to remember, like, I publish these articles and stuff. They're like in the can for a long time. And then I've already like left it behind and I'm not as sharp as I should be. So give me 1 second. But
I just did a quick Google search and yeah, the Book of Jubilees mentions Nimrod as Nebrod, which it says is the Greek form. Didn't know that. That's kind of.
You'll see mountains in like Italy called there's a lot of locations that are named after this.
Okay. Well, a little bit more about this gematria too. The 294 in Greek, the word agios, which is the saints, that's 294. And then also ecclesia is 294. They who are called out. And that's not really the church as we assume today, but that's like the inner school, the initiates, possibly this white lodge idea. As alluded to in the book Sefer Sapphires, where I was looking into the gematria, it says, quote, the priesthood of Melchizedek is not an outer order like the Masons. It is identical with the true and invisible order. The interior church, or Eckhartshausen, is another name for the same company of men and women who are liberated from the illusion of physical descent, who know they never began to live and that their lives will not end, who are, in short, free from the delusion of mortal temporal existence. These men and women relate themselves neither to the past nor the future. They live out the present, the now, with smiling hearts. I guess by that definition, I'm in because I'm quite aware that my existence does not have a beginning or end. I'm 100% in gnosis about that. So that's kind of cool. Also, another interesting one, Oculus Universale is 194, which is the eye of providence. And that brings us back to the justice or Jupiter word, tzedek.
And so this is going to be some weave. So this article is coming out on Monday. So I don't know when we're going to publish this, but it's coming out soon.
Monday.
The time we're recording
Same
this.
day.
So first, to touch upon that word, it looks like agion. I've said agion, but because sometimes when you type it into like something online, it'll tell you to pronounce it like that. But it's also the root of what looks like Agia or Hagia Sophia, but they say Hagia Sophia or Hagia Sophia. So that word agios, or it might be ios, and you're starting to see like it might have some roots, some philological pronunciations or similarities to other names. But this like is all good. Yeah. Yes.
And that's because the Greek gamma looks like a Y and can function like a Y.
Yep. Yep, exactly. Like we say gyro, but they'll say euro or hero. It's interesting. And then you see that phonetic affinity to hiero, which is sacred. But that guy, Jacob Bryant, wrote, it is said of this person by Moses that he, Nimrod, was the son of Cush, and Cush begat Nimrod. He began to be a mighty one in the earth. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. Wherefore it is said, even as Nimrod, the mighty hunter before the Lord, and the beginning of this kingdom was Babel. So when you start thinking about the astrotheology of this, what portion of the year is the mighty hunter? You know what I mean? What sign? You start getting into where the sun is. And Strabo is the one that you'll see. It's in Sicily was a mountain, Nebrodis, called by Strabo, the Nebrodi or Nevrodi Mountains. And it was a famous place for hunting. And for that reason, it had been dedicated to Nimrod. Now, Orion, there's a lot of citations. So basically, the Greeks styled Nimrod Nevrod. And Hence, places by this name are expressed as Nebrod, Nebrodes, or Nebrisa, or Nevrisa. And there's citations that, where is it? That he is Orion. I forget what portion of the Bible is, but I don't want to slow this up too much. But you can make the case that Orion was another name for Nimrod. But I would say to people, what time of year do we hunt? Right? Late autumn. What time of the year is that sign opposite of springtime, Gemini, when you see Orion? Because Orion you see in wintertime, but if you look at him in the zodiac, his placement is between Gemini and Taurus. Because you see those summertime warm months in the nighttime sky.
Yeah, and that might have something to do with some of the kind of adversarial symbolism that we see all over the sky clock. Because even though Sagittarius is the hunter and we hunt when the sun is in Sagittarius, but at nighttime, we're not seeing Sagittarius because it would be in the sky during the day because that's where the sun is at.
Exactly. The sun
you would see the opposite of Orion.
That's exactly it. And that's why Bethsaida is the house of the hunter. And that is the beginning of Babylon, which is the end of autumn, beginning of winter when the year is reckoned. And that's where I'm going with this idea that these locations are astrotheological. They weren't physical locations because they're interpreting these astrotheological texts, not understanding that it isn't history. And then they're assigning it to places that they believe this history took place in the physical world. And that's what's leading to a lot of the confusion, in my humble opinion.
Good stuff.
So the next up on my notes is Moab or Moav. So the etymology of Moab is disputed and uncertain. Ab indicates father. Moav in Greek would be mu, omega, alpha, beta. And that's why I transliterate the bayit as a vayit when I write it as Moav. And so if we look to the east, like Oriental languages, mu could mean without or not having, thus Moav, or it could signify, or Muaba, right? Moab. It could signify without father or the absence of a father, which would be how Melchizedek is described.
It could also relate to the Moabites in the Bible being immoral people, that they are without the father. They don't have Jove.
They don't, and they don't have good. Yeah, like you said, they're not raised upright by a man. They have no fathers. They're immoral. Or immortal. Is that what you said? Immortal or immoral?
Immoral.
Yeah.
Naughty.
Yeah. And that's how people who grow up without fathers tend to be. If you look at the stats of prisoners. What could an enemy of the race of Chronos, time, Israel be? I could ask, what is the enemy of the sky clock mapped out by the formation of the stars? And I'd submit it is the light of this world, the Prince of Peace, King of righteousness and judgment, the sun. Taylor then makes the case for me using, he makes the case for me by using Sanchonathan. Although I don't believe Sanchonathan is authentic, I just want to put that out there. But Taylor wrote, in the curious fragment of Sanchonathan, a Phoenician historian who flourished before the Trojan War, or at least 1300 years before our era, whose text has been translated out of the Phoenician into Greek by Philobiblius and preserved by Eusebius, we learn that this Elion, this Hypistos, is the Most High God, was a certain man who, with his wife Barut, this looks like Berith, a covenant, Brit, right? Dwelt near Webel, Biblios in Phoenicia, and begot a son named Adam because he was formed out of the earth. And that this father of Abraham, this Most High God, was killed by wild beasts. This is similar to the other sun gods being rent into pieces. I just mentioned Bacchus earlier. This hieroglyphical language evidently points to the Phoenician astrology, in which the sun, literally the Most High, is allegorized under the image of man and the wild beasts which slay him are the zodiacal animals. More specifically, the wild boar, under whose ascendancy the sun seems annually to expire in the winter, as he revives the spring. And that wild boar, I believe, is an archaic symbol of Aries. It used to be a boar at some point. And the knowledge of the Most High, which formed the great matter of boast to the prophet Balaam and gained him the credit of supernatural wisdom, was nothing more than his skill in the science of astronomy and of the laws by which the highest of the heavenly bodies regulates the succession of the seasons and the motions of the whole planetary system. You want to take over and read the rest of that? Or do you want me to keep going?
You're doing great. I got a lot to read on my side.
Okay, great.
I'm going to save my voice.
Yeah, no, that's why I'm asking. But whatever sense be given to that manifestly astronomical term, the Most High God, nothing more obvious than this, Melchizedek, priest of the Most High God, appears as a sort of personage for whom the author of the book of Genesis challenges far higher respect than for the patriarch Abraham, and assumes that his readers could have no need for more particular information. A similar abruptness characterizes the introduction of this mysterious personage in the 110th Psalm. The Lord said, quote, "The Lord said unto my Lord," or Jehovah said unto Adonis, "Sit thou on my right hand until I make thine enemies thy footstool." Quote, end quote. On which mysterious passage, the Jesus of Matthew 22:42, assuming that Adonis and Christ were one and the same person, enigmatically proves that Christ was not and could not have been in any sense the son of David. Quote, "If David then called him Lord, how is he his son?" is the challenge of the speaker in the gospel, upon whose words, quote, "And no man was able to answer him a word, neither durst any man from that day forth ask him any more questions." Now, the Bible version reads, "The Lord shall send thy rod of thy strength out of Zion. Rule thou in the midst of thine enemies." And then the prayer book version says, "In the day of thy power shall the people offer thee free will offerings with a holy worship. The dew of thy birth is the womb of the morning. The Lord swear and will not repent. Thou art a priest forever after the order of Melchizedek." So that would be the end of my free section. And for those of you listening, come on over. If you want to see all the show notes that I've produced, it would be at greattide.substack.com. The link will be in the description of my version of this on YouTube. And then Chance can promote his works where you can find it for his people.
Yeah. In the next part, we're going to talk about, at least from my notes, I'm going to get more into the meaning of Salem and that Prince of Peace attribution to Melchizedek and Jesus. We're going to talk about Mount Meru and the other sacred mountains that may correspond to the North Pole. Got a lot to talk about with the sacrifice of bread and wine and how that demonstrates the antiquity of the Christian Eucharist far beyond the Romish Church. We're going to discuss the Buddhist connections to all this, the secret of the Cresians, and with all that, I think we've got a full plate, probably another good couple of hours of content. So even though we've given you a filling meal here in the free preview with an hour of introduction to the subject matter, you know, the real good stuff is on the other side. And
tell people where they can find you, because there's going to be people on mine, but they're going to be people on mine that see it. So just give them the.
Yeah, mine's going to be on patreon.com/Interverse, or you can go to my Interverse podcast YouTube channel. You can become a channel member there. Those are the two ways you're going to be able to access this content and all of the previous episodes we've done, of which they are fantastic, phenomenal, outstanding, superb episodes.
And Chance, and for my people, for my subscribers, Chance does a lot of stuff that's totally different than what I do. So it's worth it to subscribe to him as well. You'll get totally different access to a lot of things that'll change the way you think about the world and offer you some different insights. But he has a really good podcast and he goes live every Wednesday. So you can find it there.
One of my most recent episodes, I talked to a woman who came from a dogmatic Christian background, and part of what snapped her and her hellfire and brimstone believing family members out of their conviction of original sin and all of the other kind of silly and self-defeating philosophies that mainstream Christianity derives somehow out of the Bible, even though it's not really there. She had her grandma passed away and started talking to their family through the search bar of their TV, which is crazy. Like ghost grandma typing words into the TV. And it sounds wild, but it's plausible if you research paranormal stuff. All the boxes are ticked for what's consistent among those kind of reports. And really, really cool to find out a little bit about the afterlife from spirit grandma and how that affected their Christianity and brought them into a much more aligned version of it. So, lots of content like that. And it's kind of hard to even put into a box, but that's the sort of stuff that Dylan doesn't touch that you can get on my channel.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody. And we'll see you on the other side.